We're doing it for Dale.
All right, we're doing it for Dale. I just stripped you guys a sweet ass solo for Dale. That's what I did. All right, today we're going to talk about remote tuning. After I get all this other stuff turned off, make sure it's turned off. It's off, sort of. That off. Don't need that. You need this. You need this, but it needs to be here. Okay, we're going to look at remote tuning on the Dale pick-em-up truck. I'm doing this because I figure if you're a lot of guys are maybe coming over from Cleetus' channel, you may not know exactly what we're talking about when we say remote tuning, what that entails. Usually what that means is that Garrett will call me up and he'll say, I'll be in the middle of building a motor or something, and he'll say, Pete, I need to tune up stat. I'm at the racetrack. And I'm like, okay. I drop everything and I go, well, what usually happens is he will send me the data file from the pass he just made, and he will either send me, or maybe I already have the existing tune that file was generated using, right? So then once I receive that, I'll upload it, open it up in the Holly software. I'll open up the data and the global file, and then I'll go to work. And we'll try to make heads or tails out of the data, and make an adjustment, and then I will put it back in the email, send it back to him. Elon Musk will personally blast it into his Starlink thingamabob, and then he'll download it and put it back in the Dale truck, a new tune, right? And that's basically how the process goes, back and forth all day until it rains or something terrible happens, and that's the end of it. But that's the breakdown of the process. Now, let's look at some of the data from the other day and get some idea of what was going on, because there was a few things going on that you guys probably need to know about. That's a little bit confusing. All right, I'm just looking right now at the one that says T2 August. I'm not sure if that was the second hit or not, but probably. All right, on this pass, we have several things happening here. If you look at my ignition timing, it's cruising through here, and then it dunks out a little bit, comes along, dips several places in second and third or high gear. What that is the traction control corrections. As we're getting on to, all right, back up 1 second here. We kind of overuse the term traction control, or TC. It's kind of a generic catch-all term, but it's not really the best way to look at this. The best way to look at this is we're managing the wheel speed, right? Especially on a no-prep, all-wheel drive vehicle like this, right? And the concept that you need to understand is we don't want the tire to stay really stuck with the racing surface, right? We want to slip a certain amount, right? Because 100% stuck is going to be pretty slow, right? It's not going to go that fast. Now, that being said, too much wheel speed and it'll become undrivable, and it's going to slow down at that point, right? So we've kind of got to get in the middle and find the spot where it's both drivable and as fast as possible, right? So what we're doing is we're using the TC to manipulate our drive shaft speed and try to target a path that is the fastest path down the racetrack, or in this case, the backside of the racetrack, which is basically just a street. So that's what we're doing here with the TC. Now, you'll be proud of me, guys. This time I changed. I always look at the background kind of like this, something like that. Because at the racetrack, it's much easier for me to, that's just how I like to look at it. I don't know why, I'm just that way. But it does not look good when I make these videos on this software. You guys, some of the lines you can't see that well on your little iPhones and whatnot. So today we're going like this to make it a little more obvious, and that does you probably can't see it better on your iPhones. But it is blinding me in here. Speaking of which, I need to turn this so you guys can see me a little bit. There we go. All right, so it's blinding me, but you can see it. All right, now let's look at, when I talk about TC path, I got an ICF up here, which is your traction control and drive shaft. Now, when you look at your data, the first thing I always do, besides renaming it something useful, I always make a 0 point, right? And I've already done that here. This is where we let off the trans brake button, so that's our 0 right here. From there on, we're time stamped through the path. Now, to use this traction control, we're using Holley traction control in this case, and I'll show you the differences a little bit later. But with the Holley traction control, to import the data, you have to have your 0 point set, or else it's not going to bring it in. So you import log file, boom, there's our drive shaft path. All right. Now you can see we got a little. You can look at the drive shaft data without. You don't have to have traction control. If you just have a sensor, you still need a drive shaft sensor in any kind of race car, whether or not you're using any kind of TC or wheel speed management, right? And that is because it tells you a lot. All right, from here we can see, all right, well, we got a little rise right here, a little bit of slippage. Then it comes back. You know, you can look at this data and interpret what's going up here. We got some wilder oscillations, still able to drive it. But you can see what's going on right now. If I look at my data again, I have a section for traction control. And you can see our corrections right here. And our corrections correspond with when we get above what's actually our green line here. Retard A. I'm sorry, not green. I guess it's blue in this one. All right, so when we get above the blue line, that's where we start making corrections. Here's our how much corrections it's enabled to make. When we get above our this is so hard to look at on here. Get above our second retard line, we're going to be into this different, where we're pulling more timing, and this is where you adjust how much you're pulling out down here, right? Now, on here, the way I generally use it is I try to make, you have four things you can pick from to adjust at any given point here. I usually start by adjusting a base, right? Let's zoom in to where you guys can maybe see that. All right, so this kind of teal color line here, that's our base. The green is here, or the blue is our first retard, green is our second. The red is our rev limit retard. When we get up in that, we're dropping cylinders and we're getting serious about trying to stop this tire. But if you look at our data, scroll back out. All right, I'm gonna scroll to it. I'm gonna look at a spot here where you can see we slipped above our first retard line, and that's where in here the retarded timing, right, to get the tire back under control. Now, in my opinion, the retard right here isn't really necessarily what got it back under control. Maybe, but more than likely, it was just going to slip a little bit there, and even if we had the TC turned off, I bet it would come back down. So once again, this is wheel speed management, not necessarily, the traction control term can be a little bit confusing, right? But anyhow, in this case, we want to put more power into it. So if I go to my boost controller and just raise everything up here, that's going to add power, right? But it's not necessarily going to result in more power applied to the tire, because the TC is just going to try to pull it back out, right? So what that means is I need to raise everything up. Now, usually my method for doing this is I go into my base table and I'll raise this up, right? I'll add, maybe I'll add X amount of percent or whatever to lift all this up to a plot that I'm kind of looking for, right? And sometimes I'll do it manually dot by dot, right? But I'll raise that up a little bit, and then I'll go to retard A, and a lot of times I'll work in deltas, right? Right now, our starting point, or early in the run, we're at 50, and as much as 100 from our base. What the delta means, that's the difference from the base to this line, right? And we're ranging from 50 up to, say, 100, right? And I may keep that the same, but raise the base, right? So so I'll raise the base and then put my deltas the same. So that's going to lift all these tables. And then I go to retard B, same thing. My deltas on this are 200 flat in this particular case, right? So the retard B is 200 RPM above our base, right? Rev limit. In this case, we're from 275 to 450 above the base. So when I may use these same deltas more or less and just move the base kind of and bring everything up that way. So that's going to allow us to effectively turn the power up, right? So throughout the day, I'm doing that. I'm in here raising boost. I'm raising starting line boost. I'm raising starting line RPM. All kinds of things to add power, right? Now, back to the TC, I want to show you a little bit of difference here, you guys, because I normally use the Davis drive shaft, or the Davis traction control, and we're using Holley on this one. There's a lot of things that determine what type we use. The biggest is probably budget. Some racers, the Davis is an expensive box, but it works extremely well. And there's other reasons that I use it too, we'll go over. But it is expensive, right? So for some guys, a box like that, when they're starting out, is probably not the first thing you're going to buy. You know what I mean? They need something else first, so I maybe not push them in that direction. But guys that are serious about performance and whatnot, I will definitely push them in that direction. And, on Mullet, it's Profiler. On Leroy, it's Profiler. But this wasn't in the budget for Cleet in the case of the Dale truck. One downside is that the more boxes you got, the more data you got to go through, and the more stuff I got to email, the more stuff you got to load from your email into your boxes, right? So there's time added every time you do that. But if you'll look, all right, this is kind of what you're dealing with right here with the Holley traction control. This is what you're going to be looking at, right? And if you'll notice, it's kind of crude. It's not the best looking thing as far as really micromanaging your drive shaft path. All right, in the Profiler, you have much more options, and you can really zoom in. And to me, the drive shaft information is much more accurate and easier to work with. Think of it like this. In the Davis, when you're using this software, it's kind of you're kind of working with a fine point pen, a scalpel, and you can really dive in and get real close to what you're doing. Whereas on the Holley, it's kind of more like painting with a broader brush, right? And you can see with the profiler, you can zoom. Well, you can go full screen and look at it like this. You can zoom right on in and look at just individual atoms of speed and performance, protons and electrons of boost. You know, so and for a guy like me, this is very easy and an excellent way to work. So I'm a big fan. Anyhow, back to our Davis or our Holly software and look at the data here. All right, so I want to show you some other things. If you'll notice, down here we have this wild oscillation in engine speed at the end of the track. Okay, well, what is that all about? Well, what that is our, let's go to our transmission. Oh, I'm going to change some colors for you guys. You're not going to be able to see it. Let's do this. Let's make this, I don't know what that is. Magenta. Let's see if that shows up. Oh, yeah. Look at that. All right, so this is our lockup being applied, disapplied, applied again, back and forth, right? Now, let's look at what's happening here. Let's look at our criteria. All right, in our transmission, converter lockups. Drive shaft RPM, sensor trigger value 5200. Minimum engine speed 6900. All right, well, let's see how that corresponds. We don't need this. Do need that. Okay, when it comes on, we are at 5,081 RPM. All right, well, that's weird. Doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't be on yet, but it is. All right, and then when it turns off, it's at 69. So it's doing that part exactly as it said. All right. So anyhow, I do a little diving here, and what I realize is that there are two drive shaft speed inputs in this file. Some of this is probably legacy stuff from the distant past, and one of them is set up correctly and one is not, right? So anyhow, it's looking at the wrong one. That's why it comes on earlier. The one that says 5200 is toothed incorrectly, so it says it has, the software says that it has the wrong number of teeth on it. We have to make an adjustment. So I kind of catch that, we change that, but the bigger problem is that if you look, let me see if I've got, okay, yeah, all right, I do have a high gear slip channel here, and where this thing engages, we have 33% slip in the torque converter. And what that means is that the engine speed is 7,700 and we're only at 5,200 on the drive shaft when it engages, right? Or what it thinks is 5,200. It's actually 5,100. And that's way too big of a spread. So when you lock that thing up, what it's trying to do is bring this together. Bring the engine down to the drive shaft, or the drive shaft up to the engine, whichever one is first, right? So in this case, it's trying to pull the engine down, but then it unlocks at 6,900, right? Now, in our case, it's probably a good thing that that happens, right? Because you really don't want to be locking the converter up when there's this much slippage, because it's going to try to pull the converter down to 5,200, right? Or the engine down to 5,200, which is hard on rods, all kinds of things, because you got 40 pounds of boost in it. As soon as you do that, that's going to try to turn into 45, and it's just very hard on stuff. It's not good, right? Which is why there is a minimum engine speed setting in the software, right? So there's things that we can do to make this better for today, but the long-term fix is more gearing, more rear gear, or more, in this case, gear on both ends of the truck, right? The thing is geared 373, and that's not enough, in my opinion. And we're going to experiment with more gear, and I bet it picks things up. The biggest problem with the Dale truck, the single biggest truck problem, it's a cool truck, it's really neat, but it is a tank. It is outrageously heavy, and that's not good for speed, right? Well, more gear will help that. So we're going to make that adjustment. This is really bright. Let me just turn this down just a little bit. All right, so we're going to get more gear, and what that's going to do is that's going to bring this line closer to this one to start off with. So our slippage number is going to go from 33 down to, let's say, 15 or whatever at this point. Then we lock up, right? Then it's a lot more doable deal. It's more likely to be faster. Everything is better, right? So that's a change that we're going to make. And, you know, once again, if you don't have the data to look at, you might never really kind of know that, right? Because you don't have any data. So data is king. You got to have data. What else do we got here? Oh, I know what we got. Something I was going to show you here. Fuel map. All right. Looks terrible, doesn't it? All splotchy and whatnot. Now, when I look at these things, I almost always see them like this. Once we do initial, maybe a dyno map or something, I don't ever see it like that again, because I'm always looking at it compared to data, right? So it'll be like this with a trace on it, so the colors go away. And I'll modify the path that we're going through, right? And a lot of times I'm not modifying over here because we're no, you know, a lot of these places, we can't get here. If we get here, something is wrong, going terribly wrong, right? So I'm modifying the places that we're going through. And over time, our map starts looking like amateur hour, right? But if you look at the data, and we go back to fuel, turn on our closed loop compensation. Oh, look, we're not moving much at all. 1%, 2%, right? Gets a little funky out here, but our tune up in high gear is actually very close, right? So the point there is that a perfect looking map out here is great, but doesn't necessarily mean that something is not tuned extremely well. Anyhow, I just wanted to give you a quick rundown on some of the changes that were made on the Dale truck throughout the day and what remote tuning is. And once again, I would say that remote tuning, I don't prefer remote tuning. I would much rather be there at the track with whatever I'm tuning. Not just because I want to hang out at the track. Trust me, I've hung out at the track plenty enough. I'm good. But to do my job the best as I can, there's no substitute for being there at the racetrack and you know, being hands-on, because there's things that I may see. You know, when I'm doing it remotely, my only input is maybe what Garrett in this case has told me and this file, right? And it's not the same as walking on that surface and seeing exactly where it was staged, and so many little things that can come into play. And that's why remote tuning is always going to be a compromise. And anybody that tells you any different doesn't know what you're talking about. You know, it's kind of it's a necessary evil, because in my case it means time away from the shop or whatever. But to get something, to really get stuff sorted out, you got to be at the racetrack. You know. But anyhow, that's enough for today. Like, share, subscribe, all that influencer stuff. I'm a big time influencer now, you know. Merch is at HeraldEngine.com. Whatever. Who cares?
We're doing it for Dale.